Passing to north-south is one of the most effective ways you can pass.
Recent ADCC Trials winners like Dorian Olivarez, Elijah Dorsey, and Owen Jones all implemented a very relentless style of guard passing, often threatening north-south, before chaining guard passes together and beating some of the biggest names in jiu-jitsu. So in this video, we're going to discuss this guard pass that has helped make dreams come true. And I did my study using this new feature in the Outlier database called grouped sequences. And we can see the most popular guard passes that end in north-south. Now, if you're interested in learning more about this tool, I'll leave a link down in the description. But you can see we have quite a few matches to get into, so let's dive in. Now, I found this to be a very well-made video where he outlines 5 steps needed to pass the guard through north-south. And the first step is to get angle. Now, as the guard passer, the thing that's going to stop us from creating that angle is the near leg. So the first thing we have to do is create angle and get past the bottom leg. Now, Lachlan's favorite is the leg drag, but there are a ton of ways we can go about doing this.
But often that just means that when I walk around, this leg can no longer block me.
And a very popular method seems to be using the weave to hold the bottom leg in place as you hop over. You can also use your hand to pin it, or your leg to pin it as you walk around to north-south. Or you can use footwork and hit him with the stutter step to create that angle. You could also escape their leg entanglement. Or you can try a cartwheel or threaten an estima lock, all which are valid ways of creating angle. But in my opinion, it seems like the most popular way is to use a knee cut, using a very similar concept to what Gordon talks about in his Passing 2.0 instructional.
I just knee slide out in this direction, not with the intention of passing, but with the intention of changing the angle.
And that knee cut is what allows us to create an angle and start our pass to north-south. Now, after we create an angle, we're gonna have a lead arm and a trail arm. Now, the classic pass to north-south is gonna involve our trail arm going down to our opponent's near hip. And we're gonna reach our lead arm to the far side of our opponent's body. The lead arm can connect to the near side of your opponent's body through a collar tie, but I've found this to be not very effective. So kind of the classic pass is gonna be we create an angle, our trail arm drops to the near hip, and our lead arm can either go as a reverse collar tie like we see here, or even better, a reverse underhook.
Best grip here is actually hand on the inside of the lat, so right under the armpit, like this.
Now we're gonna run into issues when we try and drop our trail arm to the hip, but we haven't quite beaten the near leg. And if we haven't beaten the near leg, we can't continue to go to north-south.
Go for the cross grip, but they don't deal with this leg properly, and so I can't actually run past the leg. That's a real issue.
So if we can't beat the near leg, we don't run towards the head, we run towards the feet. So again, if we're not able to beat that near leg, we don't keep trying to go north-south. We go back towards the legs. So now instead of our trail arm going to the hip, we're gonna bring our lead arm into the hip and go back towards the legs. And Nicky Ryan talks about this beautifully in his instructional.
So if we wanted to go north-south, it'd be right arm shooting through. This time, since we want to go to body locks, it's going to be left arm shooting through.
And if we want to see an example of this happening in a match, we can hop in here with Kenta. And we see him using beautiful high step passing to create an angle. But because the bottom player is starting to recover with their bottom knee, Kenta goes back into the legs and settles into chest half guard.
Now he's bottom half guard, chest to chest, and this is exactly where I want it to be the whole time.
But now let's say we do a good job of beating the near leg, but our opponent does a good job of using their outside leg as a lasso to help recover their near leg position. And often this happens when we use the weave to create the angle, because it gives our opponent good outside leg position that they can use to reestablish their near leg position. So to deal with this lasso, the first thing we're gonna do is relax our arm. Gordon talks about the idea that when you're using Toriando type passing, you want to utilize misdirection and feints that create tension in the bottom player's legs.
With tension running through the legs, it makes it so much easier to move the legs around and predict where his body will be.
Our goal is to make the bottom player tense while we are relaxed. But if we're tense while attempting to pass from north-south, the bottom player can use that tension to realign themselves quite easily.
By having like good solid connection here, he's got a platform to push off and he can spin himself quite easily.
So if we're using the weave and our arm is stiff, the bottom player is going to use that lasso and capitalize on that tension to recover their near leg position. And often our weave arm is tense because we're trying to plow forward into our opponent. The posture we generally have is our hips are back and we're leading with our head and shoulders. So what we can do to remove our weave arm is change our posture and bring our hips forward as we limp arm out. But after our arm is free, we bring our hips back and lead with our head and shoulders. So we use the weave combined with a knee cut to create an angle and beat the near leg. Then we relax our weave arm and bring our hips forward as we limp arm out, and immediately bring our hips back as we settle down into a guard pass.
It's either I'm like tripoded, which means my hands and upper body is very well engaged, or my legs like clearing everything out of the way.
What we really want to avoid is hanging out in this gray area here, where we have connection to the bottom player, but we're not really leading with our hips and we're not really leading with our head and shoulders. And this type of posture is what's going to allow them to entangle our legs.
This is probably the worst outcome that can occur.
So we play between leading with our head and shoulders or leading with our hips. And we're avoiding this gray area where we're somewhere in the middle. And there is a third posture that I think Kade uses quite well to pass from north-south, but that will be a bonus at the end of the video.
Don't go anywhere.
It's now time to finish the pass, and we're gonna run into two major problems. The first being, as we get an underhook on one side, our opponent connects their knee and elbow on the other. And it's that knee-elbow connection that allows them to recover their guard. And it's a bit unrealistic to get both underhooks at the same time against anyone good.
The mistake everybody makes is they try to get two shoulders inside at the same time. This is never going to work on anybody good.
So most of the time, this is going to be a two-phase battle, where we first win the underhook on one side and then switch our attention to the second side.
We already separated knee and elbow on one side. Now we have to start separating knee and elbow on the other side.
And the best way I found to deal with this knee-elbow connection is to implement Nikki's favorite method of completing the guard pass from north-south.
My right hand pummeling in towards the hip, that means that my right hip is going to sprawl on its opposite side shoulder.
So we get the underhook on one side and we sprawl on the opposite shoulder to get some form of diagonal control as we separate knee and elbow on the second side to complete the guard pass. Here we see Declan using a top pummel to create an angle, and now he starts looking for an underhook on this far side. But his opponent is doing a good job of connecting their knee and elbow together. But then they switch the frame to the shoulder lat area, now separating their knee and elbow. And Joseph shares with us a great way to capitalize on this space.
Because he's going to be framing on my shoulders, I'm going to cut my right elbow from the outside to the inside.
And Declan's able to first cut his elbow to the inside before establishing a deep underhook. And he quickly goes into that sprawl on the opposite shoulder. It's going to be very difficult for the bottom player to maintain their knee-elbow connection. But the downside to sprawling on the opposite shoulder is our opponent might have space to thread their foot on the same side as our underhook into our armpit. So if this happens and their foot starts to get into our armpit, if they can spin their head underneath us, they can threaten an armbar.
He threaded this leg through, he spins his head out this way, my arm's caught, I can get submitted.
The good news for us is we decided to sprawl on the opposite shoulder as our underhook. So even if they're able to thread their foot in, it's going to be very difficult for them to spin their head out underneath us. And as long as we have this underhook, we're going to be able to pin their leg and go nicely into a duck under pass.
I need to make sure that his head goes out this way. Okay, so if his head goes out this way, it means I can come around the corner and work to do the duck under pass.
But if we don't have the underhook and we decided to go with a reverse collar tie, when our opponent's able to spin their head out away from us, now we don't have access to that strong cross scoop grip, and our duck under is going to be weak. So the way I see this being most effective is threatening a guard pass towards north-south, getting an underhook on one side and trying to sprawl towards the other. And as you get pushed farther in that direction, it's going to give you the ability to take that cross scoop grip and use the duck under as a follow-up guard pass, which tends to be where scoop grips are most effective.
Scoop grips are great options for the third or second part of various guard passes. Rarely you're going to just walk into a guard and scoop grip right away.
But sometimes when you're trying this duck under guard pass, you're not able to completely turn the corner, and you end up in what Danaher calls the flank position, but it's more commonly known as the leg drag position. And from there, you have the option to backstep to complete the guard pass. And when this duck under backstep combo is used in unison, it's very difficult to stop. Now, if you want to go deeper into this, Gordon talks about it in his instructional, and Lachlan talks about it as well. And I tried to sum up the principles in this video here, so if you're interested, check that out. But sometimes it's going to be very difficult for us to pin their near leg to the mat so we can get over it. So if we have the underhook on the far side and we can't clear the knee-elbow connection on the near side, and we can't pin their leg to go into a duck under, now I think is another great time to change your posture, bring your hips forward, and go into a near side knee pull.
Partner getting a good tripod position. As he's threatening to bring the legs back in, we're just going to bring everything up north and expose our training partners back.
So the way we can go about this is we look for an underhook that's initially shallow to make it difficult for them to get their foot in our armpit.
You have to be careful trying to just reach around the hip. Okay, I tend to want to go wider with my elbow, see my elbow dropping down and opening out on the leg.
If we're able to do a good job of getting the underhook and sprawling on the opposite shoulder, but they're able to get their foot in our armpit, it really kills the near side knee pull and forces us to try a duck under and hope for the best.
Pretty much, once it's this deep, I don't have any other choice but to go for the duck under or just completely try to bail on the position.
So we keep a relatively shallow underhook as we start to walk away from it to keep that foot out of our armpit. And if we can pin that near leg, we can go duck under. But if we can't pin that near leg because their knee is pointing more towards the sky, then we change our posture and bring our hips forward, using a near side knee pull to expose our opponent's back. We can also use a near side knee pull to get the underhook on the other side. Then we sprawl on the opposite shoulder and reboot the system as we work to separate their knee-elbow connection and solidify the pass. But the near side knee pull requires you to bring your hips forward. And the downside to bringing your hips forward is maybe your opponent is initially framing with their knee. But as your hips come forward, now they have the ability to upgrade their frame from their knee to their foot. And now they're recovering. So as a general rule, if our opponent is framing with their entire leg, we want to do things like control their ankle and start to make it so now they're only framing with their knee. Very similar to a concept that Gordon discusses when camping at the J point.
Just understand, if at any point the knee is not available, she strips the grip, she goes to bring the knee in, I can go to the ankle. Now when she goes to strip the grip on the ankle, I can always go back to the knee.
So all of this is basically just to say, have a reason for bringing your hips forward, whether that's clearing their lasso or going for a near side knee pull, or maybe using your knee as a wedge to prevent them from spinning out.
If I can move around and use my knee to stop his head moving out, sometimes that just gives me a moment to start to clear the grip.
So to sum up, we're going to create an angle. And if we're not able to beat the near leg, then we're going to go back towards the legs. And if we are able to beat the near leg, we're going to keep walking towards north-south. And if our opponent has a lasso with their outside leg, we might need to change our posture to limp arm out. And as we walk towards north-south, we can look to control their far leg as we punch in our underhook on the near side. And immediately our posture goes back to the other extreme of leading with our head and shoulders. And once we have the underhook on one side, our goal is to sprawl on that opposite side shoulder and separate their knee-elbow connection. But if this proves to be difficult and they're pushing us farther away than we'd like, we look at their near leg, and if we're able to pin it, we can hop over and do a duck under. And if we're not, it's likely because it's pointed up towards the ceiling, making a near side knee pull a good option. But if this all seems too complicated, you can take the Kade approach and just walk around to north-south.
Kade does seem to be playing a somewhat loose or unattached north-south position.
And just try and keep their feet facing away from you. Similar to what Craig calls the dirty feet drill.
This is actually a good drill for Tyler because he doesn't own shoes.
And from there, the bottom player could just turn away, giving you the front headlock. But if not, we just kind of dance around until we see an opportunity to put angular pressure on our opponent's legs.
The movement or the action that Kade seems to be looking for is having an angle to be able to push a leg across body,
which will either lead directly to a guard pass or to the stacked position.
If he does nothing, he's giving up the pass, so he's going to have to turn, and by creating this angle, he's going to lift his hips and give me great access to an under the legs pass.
So that's it. Hopefully you found this video helpful and you start to have some success with passing the guard through north-south. But keep in mind that you don't control your opponent's head and shoulders, so it's going to be pretty difficult for us to stop them from turning to their knees.
You are pinning them in the sense that they can't bring their knees into their chest and look to recover,
but they can turn side to side because you're not controlling their head and shoulders.
So if you're doing this type of guard passing, be ready for your front headlock and turtle follow-ups. And if you're interested in diving deeper into any of the match footage or instructionals that were referenced in this video, you can find the link to the outlier database in the description below, and you can hop into the folder for this video. And if you have any questions while you're studying, please reach out in the Discord, where there's now over 800 jiu-jitsu nerds that are happy to help you out. And if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate the support. Leave a fist bump in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.